Probably the most famous science fiction story of all time, endlessly referenced, adapted, parodied. Its reach and influence is basically immeasurable. I've never adapted a book before, and all my work has been original, so this was a bit of a strange decision to make because I've had no experience in adaptations or doing anything in like script wise based on another medium. Because I was never asked to do this, so there was no project, there was no collaboration. It was just me off my own back, and the reason why I decided to do it has its own story. But first, I think it's best that we first talk about the book itself, the original book, of course. First serialised in 1897 and published as a full novel in 1898, the book was written by Herbert George Wells, best known as H.G. Wells. Telling from a first-person perspective of an unnamed protagonist, it's the story of aliens from Mars invading southern England. Using Henryk Correa's beautiful illustrations, I can give you a basic summary of the story. Basically, aliens land in Surrey in these giant cylinders, and these giant machines come out, which are referred to as tripods, as well as other machines which come out with weapons like heat rays, black smoke, things like that, and they're literally wiping out humanity. But not all of them. They actually are consuming and feeding on the humans at the same time. And it was like a cat fighting a mouse. It was just absolutely no chance, and humanity was being absolutely dominated and destroyed day by day. And in the end, the aliens were defeated by, very simply, bacteria, which was seen as an anticlimax, but that was the point of the story. My first introduction to War of the Worlds was actually the 1953 film by George Powell, it was produced by George Powell. And that really opened my eyes a lot in terms of like narrative and stories, because it was the first film I ever saw where the villains were so much more powerful than the heroes. The heroes were completely out of their depth. And these machines, which were like manta rays, they weren't tripods. And they were just so powerful, and they were destroying everything in their path, wiping out people, wiping out cities. And like towards the end, when they're just going through city by city, just destroying everything. And even humans' most powerful weapon, the nuclear bomb, absolutely did not stand a chance. And the fact that, again, when everything was seemed at loss, the Martians are defeated by bacteria, something they completely underestimated despite their great technology. Because I do recommend it. It's still a very good film, and it still packs a punch, and it's arguably still the best War of the Worlds film. More modern viewers will be aware of the Steven Spielberg War of the Worlds, which did a fine job, great special effects and that, and it also brought back the tripods properly. And of course it was an American setting. But there's also been other things, like there's a lot been independent films based on War of the Worlds. There's also been a lot of TV shows. And of course you've got like things like animation and other projects here and there, like either referencing or actually doing, a project on it. But the most famous is arguably the 1938 radio play, which supposedly many people took for real because of the way Orson Welles put it together, like it was an actual broadcast. Whether it's true or not, whatever it was, it was a cool story. But the main reason why my project came to be was actually the BBC adaptation, because I was really excited for it, because they said they was going to make it all like the proper setting, like England in the Victorian era. And I was really hyped for this because the screenshots look really cool and everything. But sadly, they butchered the story so much, I was just very disappointed with it. And of course, you've got the more recent Ice Cube War of the Worlds film, which has got a lot of traction right now. But I haven't seen it yet, and from the sounds of things, I'm not missing out on much. One of the first things I did was buy one of those very large books you get like in bookstores, which has all the classic stories put together. At the very bottom, as you can see, is War of the Worlds. And what I did was I went through the entire book. I took out what I could use, what dialogue I could use, because I'm going to use entirely Wells's original text. Because, I think if you go do a proper adaptation, use his words. The first thing I decided to do was to do it a little bit different from a normal graphic novel adaptation, which is each page will be like a full-blown painting, no panels, because I wanted it to stand out from because there's been a few other adaptations. There was like classics illustrated from like the 1950s. There's been a couple of 80s adaptations based on the TV series based on the 1953 film. It all gets very complicated. And I wanted my one to be a bit more different. So each page was like a full-blown painting, very detailed. I wanted it to have its own groove, you know. And as I've got Wells's words with me, I can really, you know, fill in the gaps he, you know, leaves out. So I try to basically just be a companion with the words, because like I always say, my main selling point to everyone, I say, Wells don't need help, you know. So my main target was to try and create a companion piece to the novel, tell the story rather than try and change it or do things to it, because there's too many people out there who generally think they can improve Wells's story. They change a lot, and I've decided not to do that. Another thing I'm doing is that the narrator will be unseen, because in the book the narrator is unnamed and you don't know anything about him really, behind the fact that he's got a brother and a wife. That's it. And I decided to keep that kind of in groove with the novel. So he's unseen behind a couple of shots. There's one shot when he's riding a horse, but he's too far away to see his face. And there's a shot when he's in the mud, when he escapes the first tripod, you know, the first tripod attack. So he's in the mud, he's covered, but his face is so covered up, you don't really know what he looks like really. They're the only two scenes, and I wanted to keep in the story of what Wells has done, because it's very much a first person. It's entirely one person's, you know, experience over this incredible situation. Like I said, there's a lot of comics and graphic novels based on Water Worlds, but as time progresses, they got more and more like ridiculous. They became more over the top, and the main thing I wanted to do was bring it back to its roots and bring it, you know, back to what Waterworlds was all about, which was quite a horrific, dark science fiction horror story. Because truth is, the stories became more and more away from what Wells has envisioned. I produced the entire book in A3, and it was all on thick watercolour paper. And I followed the story very closely, and I treated it like a storybook, but for adults, really. Because it includes a lot of dark stuff, which will quite shock people who've never read the book. Right, this is one of the first pages, which shows the Martians launching from Mars. Here's a close-up of it. Basically, I used watercolour, inks and pencils, but I also used etching, which grooves into the paper, which really gives the bumpy exterior of the Mars planet. And I really wanted to try to create a 3D effect, because you really wanted to give that real feel of a real planet. Here's the first cylinder which landed on Earth. I decided to make it gold and give it almost a rainbow coloured smoke to make it feel unworldly. And I made Earth and the people grey, so it feels like everything before has been dull, and now everything's going to be really vibrant and colourful. That's my main target. Here's some close-ups of the gory details of the heat ray. I wanted to show the flesh being ripped off, which is described in the book. Here is the tripod emerging from the cylinder. I wanted to show the proper machinery and give it a real steel look. And here's some close-ups of the details of the rocks and everything. I want to show an impact of the weight of the tripod. You might notice I have borders around my drawings. They're basically like bleeds, like in old comic books. Also, I didn't do borders on all my drawings, like this one here, which is a close-up of the eye of the narrator when he first sees the tripod. This took a lot of work, a lot of detail to draw the droplets and draw the close-up of the eyeball. This was an extremely difficult drawing to do, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. But the main star in every version is the tripods, and this is my design for it. As you might see, I made it quite obviously mechanical, as well as like nothing stiff. And the main inspirations for it were Howl's Moving Castle, the anime, which was all uneven, which is what I was going for. And of course, Tetsuro the Iron Man, which was a Japanese cyberpunk horror film, which I think captures what I was after. And this is like my original pencil sketch, which ended up becoming the cover, because I really read into what H.G. Wells wanted in his designs. And he hated anything looking too mechanical. He wanted it to be slightly biometrical at the same time. And I felt like, you know, don't have anything like diagonals or anything like that. It was inspired mostly by broken down machinery and things like that. Another thing I want to talk about is the weapons the Martians used. Famously, it's the heat ray, which blasted flesh from bone. Also, there's other machines like crawlers and walkers, which are designed to pick up people and use for their productions. But mostly I wanted to show was the black smoke, which was a chemical weapon, which was quite unheard of at the time because it was before World War One with the mustard gas, and I wanted to show the true scale and the horror of such a weapon. And another thing I want to talk about is the production of the red weed, which is when the Martians are consuming us, drinking us. And these two acrylic paintings here show the human body becoming nothing and the red weed being produced, and which goes across the land and is part of like the, natural part of Mars coming to Earth. There's a lot of images of destruction, of destroyed homes, buildings, landscapes. Obviously, as it's a war story, and it shows like the sheer ferocity of the Martians and showing how careless and how cruel they were. They didn't care what they were doing to Earth, they just wanted it. And it was inspired by images of the World War II Hiroshima bombing and the Nagasaki bombing. And it showed you like what happens when weaponry way more powerful than the nation they were attacking were doing, like the mushroom clouds and things. It was just really dark. I wanted to show that. Here is a painting of a victim who all we did was walk around and say, eternity, eternity. I really wanted to show that. And when it comes to the design of the Martians themselves, I stuck as close to Wells's description as possible. Tentacled, large, mass, like blobby creatures, which is, obviously hard to do in terms of special effects in the past. I don't blame him for not attempting it, but that's the look I was stuck with. For the finale, which is obviously a famous anticlimax, but I wanted to give it a lot of, it's not a happy ending, And here we have one of my most popular pictures, which is the Thunder Child, which is barely used in any of the adaptations, which surprises me because it's such a big scale sequence. And here is what would have been a cover, but it was considered a bit too dark and a bit too punk rock, basically. And so we stuck with what I used in the end. And here's probably my most popular drawing of the whole thing, which is a crow above a skull, which is accurate to the book, where they saw birds picking blood and flesh off bones. And here's the main cover, which I'm very proud of. And it's in the collection of my publisher. He loved it so much. He's got it upstairs in his office, which is really cool. And here it is in all its printed glory. It's come out really, really well. The quality is really good. See, I've added the text and everything, put a skull in the wall to give it a bit more like a metal feel. There's Markosia's logo, who have been such a support, and they were amazing. When I pitched the book, they were like really cool for it. They said, yeah, carry on, finish it, and we'll get it out for you. And of course, the details are really good. So I'm really happy how this cover looks. It really does capture, I think it does attract people. And here's the back cover, which, because I got my blurb there and I got an image of the Martian. And just like also it's Teen Plus, so it can, it's not really for kids, but for Teen Plus, it's solid. And here's the inside. It all looks really, really good. The print quality again is excellent. It has an old-fashioned feel to it, so it's not glossy. So I think glossy makes some of the details a bit too shiny. It doesn't actually work. So it's all come out really, really well. And they say it's all lettered. The only digital part of this book is the lettering. I use Photoshop for lettering, and it's all H.G. Wells' words. So don't worry about anyone trying to improve his work or trying to add things which are not in the book, because he doesn't need any help, and I'm certainly not going to give him any help. He doesn't need it. And like I say, it's all come out really, really well. The colours are great. So there's the crow, and it's all come out, it was way better than I expected. The project was a bit of a risk, but it's all worked out. And that's it. So I'd like to say thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a hell of a journey for me to do this book, because I started it off entirely on my own back, and it was a bit of a risk when I sent it to my publisher, but my publisher, Markosia, have been nothing but fantastic and huge support for me, so they're the biggest thank you. And I just want to say that I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll do another one of another adaptation I'm going to have released very soon as well. Okay, so thank you, take care, and thank you for your support. Goodbye.